Hello, everybody. Welcome back into the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Alec Caberna. Over there, that's Matt Morrison. No Mike Wolfgang on the show today, but he's going to be back tomorrow, Matt. And we got a lot of stuff to go into. It's NFL talk here. As we mentioned yesterday, we're switching up the format a little bit. So Tuesdays, it's straight through with the NFL. We split up when we did football. We were doing like half and half every day there of NFL and college. So we scrapped that idea. We have too many sports coming up. So we flipped it around a little bit. Tuesdays, NFL or high school recap, and then, some other sports near the end of the show. Wednesdays, similar, but college football. We start with the rankings release, go through it, and then we finish off with a few other sports there. So, Matt, we had a great show yesterday. Went right up to the wire on it. Gave out the Beast of the Week, had some great games. How about our games from this past week in high school football? We had a really exciting one Friday night. We had Howland, Cheney up there, Rayan Field. It's an old football stadium. Nice press box they had us sitting up there in. And, that was a game. Cheney kind of took control of pretty quickly in that ball game. And then we reached halftime, and Howland came out, and there was a different energy to them. They had this different feel, and they started pulling a little bit closer. And there was a moment there where you thought Howland was about to make this massive comeback out of the half, and then Cheney shut that down. But it was a great game overall, and we had some rain for a little bit, some showers here and there, injuries, some big plays. What was your takeaways from this big game this past weekend? I mean, it was two teams kind of scrapping towards the bottom, but they both needed a win, and Cheney came out on top 32-21.
I mean, it was kind of surprising because we were both going in here thinking, hey, Howland has a pretty good chance. We don't know too much about this Cheney team. And within the first 5 minutes, we were stunned because this Cheney team came right out of the gates. I mean, they scored within 5 or 6 plays, too. They were going fast.
It was immediate.
Fast running back. It was amazing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this at all. So it kind of caught me off guard, and that's good sometimes when that happens. But yeah, great performance, they were led by that running back, Malik Hunter, about 89 rushing yards.
Oh yeah, he was all over the field, man.
Matt Jones took off for a couple rushing touchdowns too, and that was a freshman. And their main quarterback, Hewlett, his last name was Hewlett, who is committed to Cincinnati.
Only a junior, by the way. Yeah, he gets injured in the first game against Fitch, and then this freshman has taken over this season. And you and I were both very impressed with what we saw in that game out of that freshman quarterback. And you expect it. Your star quarterback goes down, one of your 3 Division I recruits that you're sending out. The other 2 on that defensive line with Clive Wilson, who's going to Boston College, and J.R. Tennington, who's going to Tennessee State, home now of Eddie George, former Ohio State great running back. And you were kind of expecting, man, this team shouldn't be anywhere near good. Their top quarterback is out, especially when you have a guy who's going now to what is a top 5 school in the nation when we're talking college football, and he's out, and you kind of just expected the season to be a complete wash. But I think now this team is seeing a lot of positives out of this Matt Jones, and I think you look down the line here in 2 years, when this guy is a junior in their new starting quarterback, he's going to be getting very similar recruits to this Hewlett guy right in front of him. You just saw that skill already, that ability to get out of the pocket, take off, but also launch a few deep balls down the field. This was a game you and I both thought coming in with the potential for a downpour of rain. It was going to be Matt Woomer. He's had over 700 yards on the ground already this season, and he's been absolutely dominant, but it just wasn't the case here. This defense of Cheney was the real deal against Howland. They shut them down with a statement.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cheney, a small school. I mean, they only brought their program back, a couple years ago. They're rebuilding. Their coach has a great mentality. It was Coach Emil something. I forget his full name. But we talked to him before the game, and he was very confident, even with his freshman quarterback, and he had that defense to pack him up. Clive Wilson was a complete monster. He's on the field everywhere, every play.
Well, yeah, when you got a 6'6", 260 guy that can probably run a 40-yard dash in about 4.8 .7 seconds on the long end, 4.5 on the short. I mean, this was a quick dude, and he was huge. He was back there in the pocket every single time. And this Cheney squad moving forward, a lot of juniors in that squad, even their biggest players who are getting recruited are still younger. I think Clive Wilson was the senior, so he's going to be going to Boston College next season. But I think there was a lot of young guys that impressed on this roster. And when you're looking at a squad that has now moved into a 3-win category, they're still on the edge of the playoffs. I think they have the chance that they can make a few playoff runs here, but they're really going to need to put this together. Their junior quarterback, actually, when we talked to him before the game, he was on the sidelines with the team, and it was one of those, he was walking over fine. He suffered a broken leg, so there's a chance if they run this table a little bit more, he could make the return in the playoff. Potentially, it all is a matter of, what ifs at this point. But if that guy makes a return with the way the rest of this team has started to play and the addition of Matt Jones somewhere in this offense, I think it could make Cheney a dangerous threat towards the end of the season. I know they're far back in the rankings. I think they're only sitting at 18th or 19th in the playoff poll. They're right there on the edge, and another loss will probably knock them out. But if they can win the final parts of their season, it's going to be a very difficult task. But if they can win out and bring back this quarterback sometime in the playoffs, if they can make it through against some really tough opponents to start things off, this is a team that I think is scary quiet. You're not hearing them much. This is a team out of Youngstown. It's an inner city team. They're not big. This isn't Ursuline or Fitch, Boardman, Canfield. Some teams that are a little bit more out of this downtown Youngstown area. And this could turn into one of the Cinderella teams. There's always that one team every season that kind of surprises you, and I think that's what we saw out of Cheney this past weekend. But Matt, how about our other game that we saw, a game that we were not expecting in the slightest? Southern Indians taking on the Valley Christian Eagles. Southern opens up this game, 16 points in the first quarter, then 30 points in the second. They got shut out in the second half, but they win this game 46-22, holding Valley Christian to 0 points in that first half and just 22 in the second. I mean, Andy Hake was going all out in that second half trying to catch up, but with the running clock, he just couldn't get back into it. Yep. But this was a team that, we followed a decent bit this season, and we were very hyped about them. Andy Hake has been great to us so far, giving us, stats, full exclusivity into the locker rooms. We were down there before the game. He's like, come on down early. You can talk to any players you want. We have a chance to talk to, guys like Joey Batista, their quarterback. We talked to, what's his name? Vashawn Gurley as well.
Gurley,
and, this was just
Spradley.
Spradley. And this was just a unit that felt so confident going into this game. They looked like, when the Indians came onto the field, this is just one of those moments you're like, oh man, Valley Christian, they just had the size. I've seen their speed and athleticism this season. There was nothing about Valley Christian preparing for this game that made you think they were going to lose, especially not by what they did. And then here comes Southern Indians, completely flips the script on them. I mean, you look at that first half, I think there was 5 possessions that resulted in turnovers for Valley Christian, and 3 of them went the other way for touchdowns. I believe 2 pick sixes and a scoop and score as well for Southern Indians. This was a game that it shocked Valley Christian, and it was one of those moments we went to talk to Andy Hake at halftime just to get a feeling, and he just went, that's not good, boys, and then kind of walked away. It was one of those moments just like, I got to get back in this game or else, I'm on the line here next week. So, I mean, the players love Andy Hake, and this is only his second season, and I think this was a big tell of the kind of program he's building, that never give up mentality. Second time they've been down big at halftime this season. First time, I believe, was week 2 or 3 to LeBray, and then they tried to storm back in the second half again, but they were just down too far in that game and this game this past weekend. But this is going to be a dangerous squad coming up for Valley Christian. I mean, you look at them this season, running the table and looking dominant, and their only real in-conference loss or, not in conference, but same division loss goes to a team that's ranked 3 spots ahead of them in the playoffs, and a dominant Southern team at that. So I think you gotta love what you're seeing out of Andy Hake's Valley Christian right now. Absolutely. And they still have plenty of room to go here in the playoffs. They're not by any stretch of the imagination eliminated. It's just once they now get there, they have got to perform better right out of the gate. We have seen it that they have, but at other times they've been slow to start, and Andy Hake's got to get these boys to come out of the gates the same way they come out of that second half.
I'll tell you something. He's the man to lead them to glory. When we went down there, it was 46-0 at halftime. We went down there. He saw us. He came right on up to us, and he grabbed both of our hands, shaking them. And he's like, boys, I got to get back in this game. And the look in his eyes were like dead set on one thing. And that whole second half, they were a completely different team. Like you said,
that second half, Valley Christian was the team. That second half was the team that should have been in the first half. And if they were in the first half, this is a game I think comes down potentially to the wire, or Valley Christian pulls ahead. Just with the amount of skill they have on this team, when you have guys like Vashawn Gurley, Spradley, I mean, they have running backs out the wazoo, and then you have a 6'4" or 6'4" quarterback in Joey Batista, built like Big Ben, and can sling the rock all over the field. Yeah, we even talked to Andy Hake. He's like, I got this junior quarterback right behind him, and I feel like I could go win with him right now. The only problem is he has Big Ben standing in front of him. And that was one of those things. It's just like, this guy was huge. And you know what? He had the swagger. We went down and talked to him, too. And he was just one of the guys like, yeah, I'm ready to go. He was just calm, relaxed, throwing it around. You know, but, you know, they had a lot of problems snapping the football in this game, and it was one of those ones, I think, if they played this game 9 times out of 10, this is a game that I think gets split 50-50 between both these teams. They felt that evenly matched. I mean, with the dominant first half by Southern, then the dominant second half by Valley. If there's no running clock in that second half, there's a chance Valley Christian goes back and puts up 46 of their own. I mean, 46 of their own. We're talking about a tied ball game here down the stretch, but running clock in high school football, you know, sometimes just eliminates that chance of a comeback if you're down big.
Yeah, and, you know, it's really a shame of that. And we're going to be out there this week. We'll preview that more later in the week. We'll be out there this Saturday again calling them, and I think we're gonna really see them this week, because I really think they're gonna let out some steam from that last game like they should.
Oh, for sure. They're taking on Wellsville this week. We'll talk about that on Friday's show. The other game Matt and I call in this next weekend, Brookfield-Garfield, massive game. Brookfield coming off the loss against LeBray, but trying to bounce back here, and it would be a competitive game. We'll preview that one as well later in the week.
Absolutely.
Let's get back here into the NFL. The massive comeback for the Baltimore Ravens against the Indianapolis Colts. And you know what? I think this is a game that we all come out looking pretty good out of, considering we were like, hey, don't be afraid. Carson Wentz might make this a football game, and Indianapolis had the lead in this ball game for quite some time. It just took the greatest performance of Lamar Jackson's career, in which he went 37 of 43 with over 400 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. They broke their streak of 100-yard rushing games in a row at 44 that they just kind of finished off last week against the Broncos, and Vic Fangio was obviously very upset about it. But what an epic comeback this was. They drive it in overtime. Indianapolis has the chance to win it. Blankenship's kick goes wide, and here we go to overtime. You give Lamar Jackson the ball in overtime, you might as well start heading towards the exits. I mean, you know, this is a guy, Matt, you know, I know you don't like Lamar Jackson, but at the end of the day, this is an elite quarterback, and I think he proved that status, putting up the stats that he did, set the all-time single-game passing completion percentage record for NFL history. I think he was at 86%. I mean, and you just talk about that. The fact that we have such a mobile quarterback, a guy that has just been touted as a running back his entire career here in the NFL by fans and critics and even analysts.
Even me.
Yes, you've called him a running back. You know, it's like, oh, well, they have their running back. They just need to find a quarterback. But, you know, this was an all-time great performance by Lamar Jackson. If he goes on to have a career, you know, Brady-esque, and is able to start racking up Super Bowls, he found his first playoff win. Now it's time to add on to that. If he can do that and, you know, make this a consistent thing, there's nothing saying I don't think Lamar Jackson just proved he has what it takes. Now he's got to put it together, and if he has a Brady-esque career, we're talking about a guy in Lamar Jackson who might be going down as the greatest of all time, at least the greatest dual-threat quarterback of all time.
Definitely dual-threat quarterback, I'll give you that.
I'm saying if he has a Brady-esque career, wins,
if he has a Brady-esque
career, if this is a guy that goes out there, wins 4 or 5 Super Bowls and is putting up, 100 yards rushing, 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns through the air, and rushing touchdown, if we're talking that, and that's his consistency every game, and he's throwing 80% completion or better in those, there's nothing you can say that is even against this guy. It doesn't matter the amount of turnovers he throws or whatever. At that point, with the numbers alone on his side, he'd be miles ahead of Brady at that point. If he can get up there with 5, 6, 7 Super Bowls, he is a long way out. And there's a lot of question marks on if he can do that. But you saw in here for the first time that flash of greatness within Lamar Jackson to completely go away from what he has built his entire career on. Yeah. He made it to the NFL running the football, jumping over guys, winning the Heisman at Louisville, and now he's here in the NFL, and he's done that too. But now you get this entire flip side on it, in which the defenses have started to prepare for him to run the football. They're bringing in 2 faster defensive backs to play near the linebacker position, and they're both running that QB Sky-esque in a zone defensive coverage. They're waiting for Lamar to jump out of the pocket, and then he doesn't jump out of the pocket, and there's holes everywhere. And he has a fantastic arm. Sometimes I think that arm gets forgotten about because he runs the football so much.
Yeah, like you said, this Colts defense was prepared for Lamar Jackson to run. And that's why he did that first half, and they only got 3 points out of it.
Yeah, I mean, he still had 62 rushing yards. This is a guy that had over 500 total rushing yards in this game.
Yeah.
Or, pardon me, 500 total yards, not rushing yards.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark Andrews, what a day for him. Him and Hollywood Brown combined for 270 yards through the air in all 4 touchdowns. I mean, you look at Lamar Jackson's favorites and who teams are going to have to double team coming up. Andrews and Marquise Brown. You know, Hollywood has been given that name out of Oklahoma when he was there. And when this guy was coming out, I was like, this is the number 1 wide receiver in the draft he is going to be. I have the same feeling about CeeDee Lamb, and I'm waiting for him to turn on that jet too with down there with the Cowboys. So this will be his first season with Dak Prescott. So, you know, I'm expecting that same jump out of a guy like that. But Hollywood Brown, him coming out of college, out of Oklahoma, that extremely powerful offense in which he played with Baker and Kyler, he came out of there, and it was, boom, this is Mr. Hollywood right here. Yeah. He's lived up to that name, and just a fantastic performance. You look at Mark Andrews, 11 receptions. I mean, find your dropout guy. That's just insane. Then you even look at their other guys here who had some, you know, big catches. Devin Duvernay, 4 for 45. Sammy Texas, Watkins, right? 2 for 35. Devontae Freeman, 3 for 34. I mean, this was just an all-out great performance in which, you know, Lamar Jackson was feeding everybody at the table. You know, that's what Joey Batista said he had to do with, you know, his guys, and he had so much talent with Valley Christian. He's just got to feed everyone. You know, similar situation here. And Lamar Jackson just went, let's eat cake, baby. Yeah. And they found it there in the second half.
They changed their whole game plan. You know, I'm going to throw it. They're shutting down my running. I'm going to show everybody that I can throw. And the 442 passing yards really showed it. 4 touchdowns, like you said.
Well, I think you then flip this around the other way and you go, man, what could the Colts have done? I mean, they forced it up there to the final, and they're a 1-win team. I mean, Carson Wentz is there at 25 or 35 for 400 yards as well with 2 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor on the ground had a touchdown and 53 yards. Marlon Mack had 47 yards. Jonathan Taylor's their leading wide receiver with 116 yards and a touchdown. Michael Pittman Jr. gets a touchdown. Paris Campbell, the guy I said to look at in this game, got 56 yards on 4 receptions, so good job on me calling that one out. So, you know, listen to me in the future. But this is a game I think we all expected the Ravens to kind of pull ahead a little bit more. I mean, Mike pulled Ravens by 10, you said by 21, and I said by 17, and here we are sitting at a 6-point win for the Ravens instead. But this was just an all-time great performance, and I think the best Monday Night Football game we've seen so far.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
well, how about we
by both quarterbacks? You know, even you can't shut down Carson Wentz at all. 402 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, we kind of said that going into it. It's like, you got to watch out. This is a guy that's been in big moments. He can win football games, and he nearly did it there. And he would have if Rodrigo Blankenship hits that field goal at the end of the game. I think that's what everyone's going to freak out about. Oh, the Colts didn't win. Wentz sucked. Get him out of here. Rodrigo Blankenship didn't hit the kick. And you know, every great kicker misses, and Blankenship is turning himself into an elite kicker in the NFL, and he's got a long way to go before he gets there. But this is a young kicker who, when the tables were up and the cards were turned, he couldn't, you know, get out of it. So this is a chance right now to test the fertility of these Colts fans, to see if they're willing to stick with their team, or if they're giving up, throwing it out the window. Oh, rebuild time again. We suck. This isn't, you know, Peyton Manning. Oh, yeah, it's not Peyton Manning. You're not going to get that level of football again. Now is the time. You just have to sit and wait. It might take 20 years to get back to your level that you've been, you know, even going back just a few seasons ago. It's going to take a while. But let's move on from this one. Go to Sunday Night Football. Working back a little bit here. The Buffalo Bills, my, defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 38-20 in another epic performance for Josh Allen. 15-26, awesome. 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dawson Knox, who? 117 yards and a touchdown. Diggs had 69 yards. Zach Moss had 55 yards. Emmanuel Sanders had 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then you go to the ground. Josh Allen, their leading running back in this game, 59 yards and a touchdown. Zach Moss gets 37 yards. Devin Singletary gets 25 yards. This Bills team couldn't do a thing wrong. And then you get Gregory Rousseau and Micah Hyde each getting an interception on Patty Mahomes, who, by the way, still went 272 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he went 33 of 54 and also led his team in rushing with 61 yards. So, I mean, Chiefs continue just to struggle to put any sort of consistency together or find the running game in this. But, I mean, I think you got to give credit to the Bills' defense here.
Absolutely. Their defense is eating everybody up. I mean, Ed Oliver, he's one of the leaders you talked about. You know, Gregory Rousseau, their rookie out of Miami. And Micah Hyde getting an interception. They have some good defensive backs, And then you can't talk much. I mean, you can't talk bad at all about their offense. Josh Allen, incredible passer and thrower. And then you got the backfield with Moss and Singletary, and they're both running and catching the ball. Zachary Moss, man, had 3 receptions for 55 yards. Allen found him right in the middle a couple times, and he had plenty of space in front of him and just took off. Then Emmanuel Sanders was awesome too. This is an old dog, He started in Pittsburgh, played most of his career in Denver with Peyton Manning, a Hall of Fame quarterback, and then he comes here to Buffalo to play with probably a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Josh Allen, and still performs at a high level. I mean, and he's getting older. And then you also have Cole Beasley too. And Dawson Knox, I loved it when they drafted him a couple years ago. And he's really shown it. 3 receptions, 117 yards, 1 touchdown. And I mean, we even go here. I mean, a couple weeks ago we were talking about dynamic duos, receivers, and quarterbacks. You can go tight end quarterback even. Dawson Knox and Allen. He found Knox for
you could also go
a couple of times.
You could also go with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. I mean, that was a lethal duo last season.
Diggs,
and don't forget about Emmanuel Sanders either. That has always been a deep ball threat, as you were saying.
Absolutely.
And he was a guy who's really put up a lot of great numbers over his career. And now here he is with a young quarterback. And I think now it's that time to go back into that 2018 NFL draft, and you look at the quarterbacks that came out of there, and you got to say, this may have been the best quarterback draft in NFL history. You started out number 1 overall pick to the Browns with Baker Mayfield, who was completely flipped around the franchise. Sam Darnold got taken by the Jets, didn't do anything there, but you saw how good he could be with Carolina this season, and there's a bright future and still a long way to go for him. But now you have at number 7, Josh Allen, and if you redrafted this thing, he's probably going number 1. It's either him or Lamar Jackson. And then you even go down after, Josh Allen. You have to go all the way to the 32nd pick to find Lamar Jackson there. But you just talk about that first round alone is giving us now some of the best quarterbacks to ever play. Don't forget also in that draft, Mason Rudolph, who got picked in the 3rd round to go to the Steelers, who not as great as any of those by any stretch of the imagination, but still held this Steelers squad together while they struggled, with Big Ben out in those last few seasons. So you got to look back at this, and it's great. And you also got Kyle Lauletta, who put up the best QB passer rating in preseason with the Browns in the NFL. I mean, a lot of great guys came out of this draft, and it looks like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are the 2 best, far and ahead of the field.
In 20, 30 years from now, I bet you they'll be making a 30 for 30 documentary on this draft. They've done it before.
Right, if we get to that situation and Josh Allen continues to dominate, and so does Lamar, and they're both, this will be the Peyton versus Brady or the Brady versus Rodgers of our lifetime, right? This new era of football is going to be brought in by guys like Patty Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen. This is now the big three quarterbacks in the NFL once the rest of the oldies retire. I mean, Tom Brady doesn't look like he's going anywhere anytime soon just yet. So, I mean, they have a long way to go until they get to claim their throne. But when they get there, my, the NFL is going to be exciting to watch. I mean, it's already getting to that point where we're not really seeing a lot of bad teams anymore. I mean, you go back just 5 years ago, half the NFL was tragically bad, and everyone's restocked in the draft. The revolution of college football with getting into spread offenses, getting more explosive offensively, and getting faster guys defensively has completely revolutionized the game in the NFL because they're getting so much better out of college.
Yeah, and I want to talk real quick. I mean, this Kansas City defense is in shambles. Daniel Sorensen missed two blown coverages. Tyrann Mathieu was going crazy. He was yelling, waving his arms at him, like, "What are you doing? You left Dawson Knox wide open. Wide open!" And you left somebody else wide open, too. I forget who. But that's not how a pro...
It's not winning football, that's for sure. No. Matt, we got to move on here to our next game. Sorry. Green Bay, Cincinnati, another overtime extravaganza. Green Bay pulls out the win narrowly. They go to 4-1, 25-22 over the Bengals. 344 yards for Rodgers with 2 touchdowns and interception. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon combined for 133 yards. No touchdowns from them, but Aaron Jones, 7.4 yards per carry on just 14 carries. Devontae Adams, 206 yards receiving with a touchdown, and that's just epic. Then you flip this around, and Joe Burrow, if he cleans up the interceptions, 26-38, 281 yards, 2 touchdowns, 159 of those went to Jamar Chase. This was a battle of Adams versus Chase, and I think you love to see Jamar Chase cementing himself as that next big guy, that next big wide receiver in the NFL. I mean, I think there's always that jostle for positioning on who's going to be that next young guy to step up. You know, you saw DK Metcalf shoot out of the draft a few years ago, and now here comes Jamar Chase, and is this his first season or second? Just starting to dominate. Yeah. So you already see the flashes of dominance out of him. And this is a fantastic Bengals squad that made that comeback in the fourth quarter to be able to tie this game, to bring it into overtime, and then Green Bay's able to close it out with a field goal.
Absolutely. Mason Crosby coming in clutch in overtime. He got my beast of the week yesterday. But Joe Burrow, you were just talking about these quarterbacks, you know, with Baker Mayfield and Allen and, Lamar Jackson. But Joe Burrow, I mean, just, 2 years ago? What draft was it?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Two years ago. This draft, I mean, it brought you Joe Burrow, and this guy, he's going to be something. A couple years, this division is going to be settled by those top 3 guys. You know, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Baker Mayfield. And, potentially the new Steelers quarterback because, Ben's getting older.
I mean, if we're talking about the best, quarterback division, you got to look at the AFC North right now.
You have to. Even with Big Ben, he's a Hall of Famer. You have to.
Yeah, you have a Hall of Fame quarterback, and even look behind him, guys like Mason Rudolph or Dwayne Haskins. Yeah. I mean, those are the next guys up for Pittsburgh if they decide to move on this season, or if they don't go to anybody in the draft. I mean, this is a Pittsburgh squad that very realistically doesn't pick a quarterback in this draft because... No. The fact that you look 2 years down the line or, another draft after this one, there's better talents coming out. And I think this is a chance Steelers can go in there first round, pick up a wide receiver, or not a running back, but a tight end potentially, or an offensive line. I mean, with the defense, I think right now the Pittsburgh can still rely on their defense to win football games. In the meantime, they can drop down maybe a little bit, give Mike Tomlin his first losing season. I know it sucks to hear, but... give a higher draft pick, and you got a chance right now to go out there and load up for a late first-round quarterback.
Late first round, or even get a receiver. Juju's hurt out this season, and he's a free agent, so you don't know if he'll stay or leave.
Yeah, potentially. But back to this Green Bay game. I mean, you look at this, and I was wearing my Green Bay Packers hat today that you got me for. You got it, and then you're like, I don't want a Green Bay hat. And gave it to me. I was like, I'll wear Green Bay. I have no problems with Green Bay.
That Baker.
My first Browns jersey I had in like 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you look at this Green Bay team, and it's like, we kind of talked about it since that first game loss it has been a different Rodgers, a different Packers squad the rest of in those last 4 games, and I think you saw it here, culminating with an overtime win over a tough Bengals opponent. You have to say at this point, this might be their best win on the season, and I think you'd love that when you're talking about Aaron Rodgers. He's not gone yet. They were like last dance season, and we even made fun of him after that first 38-3 game. last dance. And now you get him coming back, and it's like, all right, this man's dancing on Dancing with the Stars. He's in the finals right now, and he's trying to win this whole thing. And this is going to be his swan song. We'll see if Aaron Rodgers can repeat the MVP season, and I think he's got a lot of people looking back his way after that first loss.
Yeah.
Well, all right, next game up here, Philadelphia, Carolina. Back to talking about Sam Darnold, 21-37, 177, a touchdown, 3 interceptions. That's not where I look at this game. He didn't have a good one. Who did have a good one? Chuba Hubbard. He's been buying his time, waiting for C-Mac to go down. He does. He's getting the majority of snaps. 24 carries, 101 yards. First time Chuba hits triple digits on 4.2 yards per carries. I mean, no one was really catching the football for Carolina in this game. It was, frankly, a poor performance in that. Then he flipped this around to the other side, Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts, similar. Average. He didn't have the running back performance out of anybody. Miles Sanders only 45 yards. He got 4.1 yards per carry. They needed to run the ball a lot more. Jalen Hurts 22 of 37, 198 yards and an interception. But I think you're kind of like both of these squads trying to find their identity, right? These are two teams with newer quarterbacks trying to see what they have, test the waters. And I think you look at this game and you see it was close with two sloppy offenses. I think both these teams come out of this game with their heads held high, saying, oh, we got some guys that can perform.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely have some guys that can perform. They come out and put that performance up.
I mean, you got to look DJ Moore in this game for the Panthers, 42 yards for him. Chuba Hubbard had 33 yards receiving as well, so they were able to find him out of the back. Devontae Smith, once again, leading wide receiver for the Eagles. And as we were talking about those quarterback duos, Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith could become somebody down the line that becomes very dangerous. So we're not going to stick too far on that game because we got this one to talk about. Justin Fields picking up his first win at quarterback. Andy Dalton had to come in for one play. He went 1 for 8 yards. But Fields, 12 of 20, a 111, and a touchdown. It's an all right performance. They didn't really use him too much. They rely on Khalil Herbert and Damian Williams on the ground, who combined for 139 yards and a touchdown. Darnell Mooney, the leading wide receiver, with 35 yards. Raiders on the other side of this. Derek Carr continues to look impressive, but he's not that Derek Carr from those first few games. No. Now just 22 of 35, 206, 1 interception. Josh Jacobs finally back, but he's not at his level anymore. We don't know if that's the injury that's been bugging him this season or what it is, but just 48 yards and a touchdown on 15 carries. Hunter Renfrow, leading wide receiver for the team at 56. And you look at this game, it's a big win for Justin Fields. He needed this, right? He needed that confidence booster. He needed something to look at here in Chicago. And I think you love that. They didn't use him, but when they did, he was effective. I mean, you throw it over 50% completion in a game like this against a Raiders squad whose defense has shown to be pretty good on the season. And then the Bears defense, we know that this was an elite defense, and they showed that in this game. They held an explosive quarterback and, Carr to just what they did. I mean, no touchdowns thrown in that game for him. And then I think you also have to look behind the scenes now at all the Raiders drama that is now pouring out as this week goes on. I mean, you see that loss there on Sunday night, and how fitting is it that John Gruden's final game is against the guy he traded away in Khalil Mack, and Khalil Mack went off in that game and, made it, hell for Derek Carr. And now we look now at John Gruden and all the stuff that's coming out. He resigns after that final game. I mean, this guy that still had, I think, 6 years left on that 10-year contract, and now has to forfeit all of that because of what he's done over the past decade. I think that kind of steals away from this game, but I think it's something we need to talk about here.
Yeah, it's horrible because, John Gruden is definitely that Hall of Fame type of coach, even...
I think this takes him out of the Hall of Fame now because of all this.
I really think it is, it really made me sad when I learned about this because, I'm like, the Raiders, they got Gruden back, and I actually showed joy in that. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna root for them. I like this.
I think that goes along with a lot of the Raiders fans. I think the only reason a lot of them stuck the move to Las Vegas was because of a guy like John Gruden and Derek Carr as well. Yeah. And now you got to look at Derek Carr, who has a expiring contract, and he's a guy that has said he wants to retire with the Raiders. This is where he wants to be. But now you almost got to raise question marks depending on who they bring in as head coach. I mean, I imagine they just have an interim head coach the rest of the season, then they go out hunting next season. And I think if you're looking to bring in any guy to this offensive-minded team, Eric Bieniemy. I mean, we've been talking about it all season. Someone has got to get Bieniemy, right? I mean, this has been the storyline the last, 4 years in football? Yeah. No one's been hiring him. This is the perfect opportunity now for this Raiders team with an offense that can be built, completely rebuilt because they have all the pieces that can do so many different things.
Absolutely. And you talk about pieces, I mean, they have some pretty explosive running backs, Jacobs, and I mean, even Kenyon Drake, man, that guy can take off. Then that receiver core as well. I mean, what was his name? 1 second.
Renfro, Ruggs,
Henry Ruggs, Hunter Renfro. There's a couple guys, yeah. I mean, Darren Waller. I mean,
Waller's a huge guy. I mean, they have so much they can work with going forward. I don't think this hurts the Raiders as much as, it just hurts the NFL.
Yeah.
You get this guy who's supposed to be one of your top coaches, an elite guy who's been there for a while, and then all of this comes out, and it kind of makes you look bad again. This is the NFL that I think going into the season had just gotten out of the bad situations last year. All the protests, kneeling for the anthem and all that kind of stuff that came out that we're not talking about here. Right. But, they were getting in a lot of trouble with the fact that they were trying to tell players to stand, they wanted to kneel, and then you get all the outpouring from fans that are calling the NFL racist, you get all this stuff, and it kind of felt like they had kind of gotten a little bit past that this season. You didn't hear anything about kneeling so far. Teams did what they wanted to, and it's not televised, so people couldn't really say anything. Yeah. And now you get here kind of you're outside of that, and then it all comes right back at you, right? All the racist, anti-gay, homophobic stuff that came out from Gruden. A lot of bad came out of this situation. And, we say it's a lot of bad. It's better for the NFL that this guy's gone. And it's better for the players, and it's better for everybody around. It's just sad to see it happen because it's something
especially to John Gruden.
It's especially anyway. You don't want to see this kind of stuff happen, but at the same time, we're in a day and age. You have to be better at this. If you're wanting to be an NFL quarterback, Matt, this is the same as you and I. We are careful with what we put out on the internet because we're trying to make ourselves. I mean, this is what the NFL is. I mean, what NFL and the media is now. Can you imagine how much more scrutinized that it could get in the next 20 years as we're trying to move up? I mean, this is the thing that we're taught in high school that. You gotta start watching what you put out there and what you say to people, what is out there on the internet. Everything is saved, right? And this is something that you go back to just 2011. That's not that long ago. Yeah, it's a decade ago when this stuff was happening, and even further back, you have to imagine with John Gruden. But this is something that, frankly, John Gruden comes out of this looking like an idiot. If you're gonna say that kind of stuff, you keep it behind closed doors because you have to know as an NFL coach if any of that comes out about you, you're gone. You're gone. I mean, there's no room for error anymore.
No.
I mean, you see it with broadcasters, media members, for the most part, coaches, players. If you are saying anything like this, you're torn to shreds by the media, by fans. People are calling for your head. In New York, if you're playing in Los Angeles, or you're up in Wisconsin, they're calling for you down in California. I mean, this is something that. It doesn't just stick with the city that you're in. This is being blown up across the nation, and it makes not only you look bad, your organization look bad, and it makes the NFL look bad. And that's not the important part here. It's just the important part is these guys have been doing it for who knows how long.
Yeah, and it's
disgusting. But let's move on here to our next game a little bit. Arizona Cardinals still 5-0. Murray looked a little bit more human. Didn't put up the rushing yards, but 22-31, 239, and a touchdown for him. And D-Hop got 87 yards with a touchdown. Rondale Moore, a guy that we've been highlighting a lot here on this season, 59 yards for him. And Christian Kirk with 39. Before we get to that, flip it over to the other side. Trey Lance, who suffered an injury in this game, 15 of 29, 192 yards and a touchdown. He also led the team in rushing yards with 89, and I think that's almost becoming the new style of quarterback. You have to be able to run the football, and guys that we can see lead the team in passing and rushing are becoming, what everybody wants to pick up here in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely.
But go ahead and talk about the Cardinals here for a little bit, then we'll move on rather quickly.
Quick.
We got a lot of games to go to here. So,
how about that? First of all, the dime by Kyler Murray put it right on point, and then the catch by Rondale Moore, 2 feet in bounds, going out of the ball was out of bounds. He made a circle catch. It kind of reminded me of Chris Carter back at Ohio State back in the 80s, catching a ball that was being thrown out of bounds. Unbelievable catch.
And I believe Chris Carter's record just got passed by Chris Olave. Just kind of point that out there.
Oh man. Oh, yeah.
I think for career touchdowns, Olave's now up to 4th. Yeah.
Yeah. But Rondale Moore, man, he's really fitting himself into this offense.
And he's got the perfect system, right, with guys like Kirk and Hopkins around him to really take those defensive backs and double teams and really force those safeties to pay attention to them. Then Rondale can really just slip in and out of coverage, and that's what they did. And he's becoming a crucial weapon for this offense. And much like Curtis Samuel was for the Panthers, he's becoming a huge addition, and you're kind of able to find him in multiple facets of this football game.
Absolutely. I mean, D-Hop, 6 receptions, 87 yards. That's your main guy. Then you have Rondale Moore and Christian Kirk, both with 5 receptions. Moore with 59 yards, Kirk with 39 yards. 59 for Moore, 39 for Kirk. That's unbelievable. And if you can't find those guys to go to, keep in mind that you still have A.J. Green, who has gas in the tank. You got breaking news, tell me.
All right, so we got some breaking news here from the Chiefs. They've now placed Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the injured reserve and waived Daurice Fountain. So big news coming out of there. Chiefs losing big running back for the season. I mean, with the season they're having right now, you never know what could happen. Maybe it's a spark that kind of lights him to, go around the loss of Helaire, or if this is just a season that's like, you know what, let's tank, let's get a good pick here, and let's see what we can do next season when we get him back. I don't think that's what they do because Mahomes isn't that kind of quarterback.
No.
But if they continue to lose, you might get that stretch where they might lose one on purpose here and there. If it's coming down the stretch, they just go, hey, why don't you miss this kick wide left? One of those situations. But, let's move on here to the next game. It wasn't great. It was in London. In the Toilet Bowl playing in London. They got another bad game coming to this week. I feel bad. But the Atlanta Falcons take the win over the Jets 27-20. Wilson 19-32, 192 yards and an interception. Michael Carter leading running back 38 yards with a touchdown. Corey Davis leading wide receiver 45 yards, no touchdowns. On the other side, Matt Ryan went up and put himself a beautiful masterpiece up there. 33 of 45, 342 yards, 2 touchdowns. Cordero Patterson on the ground, 54 yards rushing. And Mike Davis with 53 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts, leading wide receiver, 119 yards and a touchdown. Cordero with 60 there as well. So over 110 yards there for Cordero Patterson. And you got to highlight Kyle Pitts. First time that Matt Ryan has gone his way, and it pays off.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has looked like the Matt Ryan of old, that Super Bowl Super Bowl season Matt Ryan. I mean,
which we haven't seen this season. I mean, this is the first time we've seen Matt Ryan look like he did a couple, more than a couple years ago.
Yeah, that was a while ago now. I can't believe that. But yeah, I mean, good performance for him. And then Cordell Patterson, I mean, that guy's a beast. Period.
All right, briefly here, let's flip it over to Tampa Bay. They picked up the win over Miami, 45-17, in a dominant performance, scoring 21 points in the fourth quarter of a near-tied ball game. It was only 24-17 at that point. Now they come out in that fourth quarter, blow them away with 21 points. And Tom Brady puts up 5 touchdowns, 411 yards, 30 of 41. Fournette on the ground had 67 yards and a touchdown. Antonio Brown, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. Mike Evans, 2 touchdowns and 113 yards. Then Chris Godwin with 70. An epic performance right now for the Buccaneers. They continue to roll along this season. It's a team that I said have looked unstoppable. And right now, I think we have a potential meeting between the Cardinals and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers later in the playoffs, is what I'm thinking right now. I mean, you look right now, your two top teams. I I mean, those right now are the two top teams, and I don't think it's really close besides the Bills.
No.
I mean, those are your three top teams, I should say.
Absolutely.
Cardinals, Buccaneers, Bills.
Yeah.
CBB. Insane. College basketball. We'll get to it here in a couple months.
Yeah.
But let's move it on. Go ahead right here, then we'll move it on to one final game.
Yeah. Antonio Brown still has it, okay?
Unfortunately.
I have a lot of emotions about him. Yeah, I know you do too. But 7 receptions, 124 yards. Like, you can't ignore that. The guy still has it. Okay, I just want to point that out.
Yeah. All right, let's move it on here. Matt, how about your game? You take down the 3-1 Denver Broncos, 27-19. Pittsburgh avoids going 1-4 on the season. Big Ben, he was okay. I mean, he played good. 15-25, 253, 2 touchdowns. And Najee Harris, finally. They took the ball out of Roethlisberger's hands and put it into Najee, and he repays them on 5.3 yards per carry, a touchdown, and 122 yards. They also got Snell involved, too, which is something we haven't seen. They have been afraid to pull Najee Harris out of the running back position all season long. They finally do it and allow Benny Snell to come in. He averages 4 yards per carry, just 5 carries, so he got 20 yards in that. But it opened up this offense, I think, a lot more. Najee Harris was not your leading wide receiver. Finally, he only had 2 catches, 20 yards. Perfect. Take that. Perfect. Let him pound it on the ground. Claypool, finally, thank the Lord, 130 yards and a touchdown. And drop hands, Deontay Johnson got 2 receptions for 72 yards and a touchdown as well. Yeah, he's forming a lot. And James Pierre had an interception. This was an overall best game of the season right now for Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. I'm going to go
ahead, take it away.
Section by section, but I'm going to go quick. Ben Roethlisberger. Best performance of the year right now. I know it's against the Broncos, but the Broncos are 3-1. I mean, I know they had some easy wins, but they were still 3-1, good record. But Ben Roethlisberger only threw it 25 times, and that's where they need to keep him, okay? All right, that perfect there, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. All right, moving down to the rushing. Najee Harris and then Benny Snell. You split them. I've been talking about this past couple shows. They need to get Benny Snell involved. They need to split time with Harris and Snell. And, even if it was only 5 carries and 20 yards, he's still got his, he's got his piece of the pie, as you would say. And, obviously going down to the receiving, Deontay Johnson, who has, he's kind of looking like that comeback player a little bit. Last year, he was abysmal, couldn't catch anything. This year, he looks reformed, absolutely. And then Claypool kind of cementing himself as that number 1 receiver, finally. You got Johnson, you got Claypool. Juju Smith-Schuster got hurt and went down. The guy's going to be a free agent next year, and we really haven't seen that flashiness since, Antonio Brown was here and he was that second man. We haven't seen any of it at all, and it's a shame. And then, Pat Freiermuth doing really good, getting all the tight ends involved. Zach Gentry even had a catch for, 13 yards. And Eric Ebron, who had another case of the drops last year, made some, pretty athletic catches in this game, even though it was 2 receptions. And then on the defensive side, real quick here, James Pierre, undrafted, okay? This guy, definitely a surprise on the season. Mike Tomlin really knows what players to take. Everybody's like, oh, Bill Belichick is the golden guy taking these guys that nobody heard of. How about Pierre? How about this guy? Nobody has heard of this guy, and he's performing very good, okay? Very good.
Matt, before we move on here, let's flip it over to the other side real quick. Yeah. Teddy Bridgewater, 24-38, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns, interception. It was a great game for him. If this is a team that, it just pulls it a little bit more together in that final quarter. They put 13 points up in the fourth quarter, but you have to win earlier in the game. You can't make it that second half comeback. And that's that's something a lot of teams have to learn. And, sometimes you're in that situation and you just got to try it, but it didn't work. They still had over 100 yards rushing on the ground. Cortland Sutton, 120 yards and a touchdown for him, and Tim Patrick with 89 yards. It was a great game, I think, for the Broncos, and I want to say that they're pretenders, but, still a lot of way to go in this season. I think they very easily have the pieces to turn this thing around, but can't go any farther into that. We got to turn this thing around. Head over to Major League Baseball. first team has advanced to the conference series, and it's the Boston Red Sox. They take the series over TB 3-1 in a great game last night, and currently White Sox is in a game against the Astros, bottom of the second inning. Houston leads the series 2-1, so it's an elimination game. White Sox on top, though, 1-0 as of right now. Up on the mound, I believe. Actually, no. Up on the mound is McCullers for Houston, and Garcia's batting at the moment in the bottom of the second. So there we go with that. But we have a lot of elimination games coming up, and I think the big one you have to look at tonight, besides the White Sox and Brewers, is the White Sox and Astros, is the Braves and Brewers. And it's the Brewers squad that comes in with the higher ranking. Matt, I know you love your Braves. They're up 2-1 right now in the series. And if they close this one out tonight at 5:15, they take this. They take this thing and they go into the ALCS against potentially the Giants here, who hold a 2-1 lead over Los Angeles. And which also the other game going on later tonight.
Absolutely. So we're going to see a lot of decisions here tonight. Atlanta Braves. Talk about that game yesterday. 3-run home run by Jock Peterson and the former Dodger, in a 3-run home run. I believe it was him. I'm pretty sure it was him that hit it. But still, and that's a team that has lost Asuna. That was their big player. But everybody's like, oh, the season's in the garbage. No, they have completely other guys that are capable of winning. Ozzy Albies, Freddie Freeman, guys like that. They can get it done. And they've shown it here. A lot of people doubt him. Oh, Milwaukee Brewers are going to come in and clean house. No, Braves are like...
both Mike and I picked the Brewers to win this game. We liked the CAD coming in. I think we all don't have anything against the Braves. But there's something, the way the Brewers should look on the season, number 2 team, coming out there in the rankings, besides, the dominant part of the NL with the Dodgers and San Francisco and the Padres. But you look at them coming out as the number 2 ranked team, right behind that other part of the NL. This was a dangerous team, and I think if you were looking at this without Los Angeles or San Francisco in this playoff, it's potential that they're favorites to be in the World Series. So I think you turn this around now, and Atlanta Braves are coming in here, and they're about to clean house and make it 3-1. No brooms just yet in the playoffs. Every team is... no series are going to be swept right as of right now. We could get that into the championship series, but I think you look at baseball right now, and as Mike is always saying, you never know what's going to happen. It's the most exciting playoff series to go on. I think this just proves that point because of the fact you even flip this around and you look at Boston. Yeah, they were a 4-team, they were a wild card, and then they come in and clean house against Tampa Bay 3-1.
Who we all picked to go to World Series, and everybody and pretty much everybody else was like, oh, they're going back. They're a 100-win team.
This is a Tampa Bay squad that dominated the AL East this season. You even look at it, they were far and ahead the better team than Boston and New York. They clinched the number 1 playoff seed a while ago, and here they come in. Maybe they were just riding too much of a season high. They get in there, they go, oh man, we just had a great season. That was phenomenal. We couldn't do anything wrong. And then they take that kind of like last month off, that last few weeks, and they get to kick back and relax. I think they may have lost gear. And with Boston continuously fighting with New York and a few other teams right there at the end for that final playoff spot, I think Boston came in with that chip on their shoulder because they won that there down at the end, and they needed it, right? They were feistier down the stretch, and you turn that into postseason baseball. They came in hot. That Tampa Bay's team that played hot this season, then they come here into the playoffs, and they didn't really have that pressure anymore. And then Boston flips the table with all the momentum in the world, and then they take the series, and right now, it's hard to say Boston isn't going to the World Series, whether they face Houston or Chicago, because they have looked dominant right now.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing we talked about with Los Angeles. They have miles of depth, and they can do everything with the baseball when it comes to their offense as well.
And here's a little stat for you. And last time, Boston does not lose in the playoffs, okay? Last time they were in the playoffs, 2018, what happened? They won a World Series. Before that, they were in the playoffs 2013. What happened? They won a World Series. So they are unstoppable in the playoffs.
You look at the last decade, 2 for 2. So they make it 3 for 3. Maybe.
Maybe.
Odds would say so, but obviously a long way to go. San Francisco, Los Angeles tonight. That should be a fantastic game. You have 2 high-powered offenses, and San Francisco's on top with some great pitching as well. And San Francisco, I think, is in the lead right now to take this one into the World Series. I mean, they still will have to get past either the Braves or the Brewers in the NLCS, and we're going to find out who's in these by the end of the week. We're going to be talking about these games every day, but now we can get into, Friday's matchup for the ALCS between either Boston and Chicago or Houston, and then on Saturday, the NLCS will kick off with either San Fran, LA, Atlanta, or the Brewers, and this postseason picture is getting very clear. It'll be very clear by the end of the week. And I think you look at this right now, you get those top, 10 teams in baseball. That first wild card, it doesn't always matter. And then you get into the ALDS, and you're just like, all right, whatever. If you don't have a team involved, you're just kind of like, all right, let's see how this turns out, whatever. Now you get into the championship series, and you got to go, all right, it's time to sit down and watch every single one of these games because I'm about to see something. So we're getting very near to that.
And my bad, the Red Sox. We'll just go with 2018. The last time they were in play was 2018. They won the World Series. My bad, I screwed up.
Come on, man. Come on.
I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I think with that terrible analysis by you, we have to flip sports. So we got to throw baseball out of here. Let's go into
I was right
NHL.
About 2018 now.
NHL, they're kicking the season off tonight. Matt, your squad, you're wearing the jersey. Pittsburgh taking on the defending back-to-back champions, Tampa Bay. I think next Monday we're going to get into predictions with Mike on the show, or potentially tomorrow, predictions for the season. We're going to make our picks on who we think is going to win it. But Pittsburgh at Tampa Bay tonight, 7:30 on ESPN. NHL making its return to ESPN for the first time, I think, over 20 years. I think they were last on in the 90s. So it's been a long time since they've actually been there.
I think it was 2008. I heard it during class today. Don't quote me on that.
I was the one that said that. I was not, so.
Okay.
You heard me across the room, so no. It's been a long time since they've been there, so we'll see. Other great game, though. I mean, you look at Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, and that should be a fantastic one. Pittsburgh has so many star players, and they always do. It's always a fun squad to see. Tampa Bay, though, is unbelievably good.
And we're starting out with Sidney Crosby. Crosby's gonna be out for a little bit, so it's gonna take our younger guys, to come in and face a team like this. And you're really going to see who you have without your best player in Sidney Crosby, especially when you're playing the defending champions tonight.
Defending back-to-back champs right now.
Back-to-back champs.
Tampa Bay is by ahead the favorite right now to three-peat for the NHL championship, which hasn't happened too much in NHL history, if at all. I'm not 100% sure. But you flip it down to our other game, the two newest franchises in the NHL, Seattle Kraken playing their first game against the last, new expansion team in the NHL, the Las Vegas Golden Knights at 10 p.m. also on ESPN. And you look at that, Seattle playing without five of their starters, or five of their main guys all injured here to start out the season. But, it was a team that impressed, I think, during preseason. They had a lot of good games, and I think you open it up here against a very difficult opponent in Las Vegas. It's probably a season that starts off with a loss for them, but a positive one to look at. I mean, I don't think you expect the Seattle team to have the season Las Vegas did right out of the gates because of the way that the NHL changed that expansion format and the way that they added teams and how they got to pick around with players. So the field wasn't as great as it was for Vegas, who was able just to grab everybody, and it was stacked for them. I mean, the deck was stacked in Las Vegas' favor. It got changed a little bit, and Seattle not nearly as an advantage, but they have some great players nonetheless.
They have some good players.
And I think this is going to be a much-needed boost for the NHL to bring Seattle into their market. And I love the move that they brought in this team. It's the Kraken. I love it. It's Seattle is right there on the Pacific Ocean. Absolutely. Might as well use something with that and make it a team that you can't move out of there because their name is, the Kraken. That's not going to work in Texas. No. Or Nebraska, Oklahoma. It's not going to work in those places. It's a team that has to stay right there in Seattle, and I think they're going to be there a long time, and, hope the best of luck to them. But those are two big games on NHL tonight. We're going to talk about them a little bit more tomorrow. We're going to talk NHL every day now on the show, much like we're doing here with baseball. But 2 minutes to go here until 3. Power Hour comes up next on ysnlive.com. I'm Alec Caberna. That's Matt. We're going to talk college football tomorrow, starting out with the college football rankings here from the Casual Sports Podcast. But that's our Tuesday show. Mike will rejoin us tomorrow. So without any further ado, sending it back to YSN and Power Hour up next on ysnlive.com.